Hey kids, this is Jurassic James, and Jurassic James looking at Ornithocheirus. The name Ornithocheirus, ornith, root word meaning bird, chirus is in hand. Think chiropractor, the person who does hand practice, they help you there. The idea is that this animal has bird-like hand. Now, it's a pterosaur, and I've only done maybe 3 or 4 pterosaurs, no more than that, about 4 pterosaur videos. One thing about the pterosaurs, the flying reptiles, is they are not dinosaurs. Now I know most kids know that, adults usually don't know that, but here's the thing. Here's my example, kids. Imagine you have you and your siblings and your parents, and then there's an uncle and aunt, and they have their kids, your cousins. Then you have a grandparent. So basically you're all in the same family, but you're in your household and they're in their household in most cases. Well, the idea is that pterosaurs and dinosaurs, like the grandparent, they share a common ancestor, but they are different family, different groups. And so pterosaurs are less understood than dinosaurs because one, their bones are very thin. They're like millimeters thin. So they don't really fossilize very well. So then we call fossil bias. So when you find a few of an animal or a lot of an animal, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a lot of that animal around. We find a lot of them. It could just mean the area they're living in preserves them really well. Meanwhile, pterosaurs having very thin bones, being in very violent environments, maybe when they die, they don't get preserved very well. So it doesn't mean there's less pterosaurs. It just means that the environment doesn't fossilize them very well. But anyway, so we have 2 specimens here, the Jurassic World, of course, and for my first one, which is where is your name? Company name, let's see. Usually for dinosaurs, they're on the tail. Oh, there it is. 2011 Collect A, of course. So this animal was made famous by the BBC's documentary Walking with Dinosaurs back in 1999 or 2000. And there's parts of this. Okay, so first of all, what we know is Ornithocheirus was discovered in England in the 1800s. And so when you see the documentary, if you ever watch it, the Ornithocheirus animal starts in Brazil and flies across the Atlantic Ocean to Europe. First going up to North America, then across the Atlantic to Europe that way. Bear in mind that this is during the early Cretaceous period, so the continents of Pangaea, the supercontinent, it's just began breaking away. So the Atlantic Ocean wasn't as big then as it is now, right? That being said, the animal Ornithocheirus is a real genus. It is recognized, but the few remains that are still considered Ornithocheirus are very few remains. The animal you saw in the movie or documentary was actually something called Tropegnathus. And here is actually a Walking with Dinosaurs figure of Tropegnathus. And you'll notice they have a very similar structure. And what happened here is very simple. In the early 1800s, they're finding these pterosaurs, and initially they were all considered different species of pterodactyl. And I can tell you that this is not a great pterodactyl, but it's the only pterodactyl I can find. So here it is. And so, or Pterodactylus, the actual genus. And so initially, Ornithocheirus was considered a big pterodactylus. And then different paleontologists looked at it and said, no, there's more going on here. It's bigger, different features, more specified. And the group Pterosaur was formed. So when you hear dinosaur, that's T-Rex, Triceratops, Stegosaurus, all those guys. Pterosaurs are the flying reptiles, and I have a lot of them here to kind of show you diversity. So Tropegnathus and Ornithocheirus are actually close relatives, but this guy's from South America. These guys are from England, basically. And I have another model of it here. There was a teacher supply store, and I bought this as a kid. And they sell these, and there's no marking on the actual figure, so I can't remember the company. I've actually tried to scan and lens search it. I can't find it, but here's a smaller example of that little guy there. And so, again, with the figure itself, again, I can't. It's one of the tricks, because one of the questions I get a lot of in paleontology, when I get to the higher levels, is for the public, is you find a few bones, how do you know what this thing is? And so with Ornithocheirus, there are a few bone fragments that are not in good condition, and so you say, how do you know how it looks? Well, it turns out pterosaurs are, when you see a long-necked sauropod or a armored ankylosaur, there's a lot of diversity in the dinosaur branch, right? Pterosaurs have their own diversity, but it's not as dramatic as dinosaurs. I mean, you go from looking at a T-Rex to a Microraptor. One's really small, but you look at a Stegosaurus, one has plates and spikes, right? With pterosaurs, they have kind of the same design. There's 2 major branchings, but they have the same kind of design. It's their head crests that are different. So with Ornithocheirus and its relatives, we see more of these guys. We can say, well, it's kind of the same family, similar features. We can just do some math for dimensions. This one's really fun because I personally like when pterosaurs are doing this, when they have them walking. They kind of look like bats. Difference is, if you don't know, a pterosaur, meaning winged reptile, or commonly called flying reptiles, they are not dinosaurs again. Where we have a hand with 5 digits, being humans. A bird has the two little things here, and there's like big feathers usually attached to that. A bat has all the fingers, but they're very long. But pterosaurs have fingers in the sense that they have the 3 big fingers here, or the main, we consider a hand, and then the ring finger goes on and on and on. So what you're seeing right here is really the ring finger going on to the end. And that's something that makes pterosaurs really unique. When I always say, you never want to have tea with a pterosaur, they will knock over your dishes every time they're sipping the tea. It's a bad joke if you didn't catch that. The idea here is that most of them are depicted flying, which is their design of flying. It's very clear. But the thing here is that this guy is showing you how they walk. And they would have had to walk. And later pterosaurs than this guy, like Quetzalcoatlus, the Asdarchid family, they would have been mainly terrestrial, walking a lot. But the idea is very cool that you can see this here. This one shows it kind of upright. There's no reason to think they couldn't do this, but I'll point out to you that their feet are not talons. They are not grasping. I know in Jurassic Park and World and all the series and movies, the pterosaurs fly down and grab their feet like talons. If you ever see an eagle or falcon talon, it's a huge thing. Big claws, big strength and muscles. Pterosaur feet are very like bat feet. They're very thin and small, and they're there for walking mainly, right? So this guy's pretty good if you're going to get a scientifically accurate. Actually, there's not many Ornithocheirus figures out there, so this is the only one I ever found before Jurassic World. So again, it has all the major parts of a pterosaur. You know, it has the hands, arms, the membrane here. They don't have like feathers. Well, wait. Birds have feathers that help them fly, right? This is a skin like a membrane. So imagine kind of like the skin between your like your fingers and toes here, but extend it more, a little more complex than that. But more importantly within this is that they do have a downing covering. So it would appear to you and I like fur. But in the world of zoology, hair and fur are a certain thing associated with mammals. Reptiles, well, dinosaurs and so on, have feathers. The kind of feathers they have are like a real small downing. So they're still feathers, but to you and I, visually, they look like fur. And so this guy kind of has that. You can see kind of like this kind of broken pattern. It's not like a bat skin. So that's the main thing to look at. That says it's really accurate. I would say it's the most accurate out of these two, but it's not 100% in my opinion. The next guy we have here, of course, is the main Jurassic World model, and with the official scissors of Jurassic James, we went out free the beast. And so my wife, Mrs. Washington, or Lady Washington, as I call her, she was like, "You're still opening your figures from like I bought you on Valentine's Day and Christmas." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a lot of stuff." And so here we have that guy. We'll talk about. So as far as the figure goes, let's see. You have for the Jurassic World part, you have your DNA code right in there. Let's see what else. The limbs go up and down. The arms can do this. There's no kind of motion gimmick. The mouth opens and closes. I noticed that, what's really fun here is that this guy has no teeth. And famously, yeah, there's no teeth in there. So there's no teeth inside the jaw. Famously, the pteranodons, whose name means wings without teeth, they famously have teeth in Jurassic World franchise. But the Ornithocheirus, who most likely did have teeth, does not. Because, I don't know, they hate me. So, let's see, 3 fingers, actually, no, wait, what is that nubbin there? So, this hand is weird, because pterosaurs, they don't have a pinky, what do you call it, pinky, the little finger, they only have the 4, and the ring finger is a really long bit going across, so that's correct here, but they have 3 here, so they have 3 there, and what seems to be a 4th finger there, so that's kind of incorrect. With the feet, they normally have, this is missing, they each have 4 toes in the feet, and so that's pretty good. The wings overall are very small for the animal's size. When you look pterosaurs, if you look at well, I'm gonna show you some more in a minute. But pterosaurs, to me, I always joke and say it's kind of like God was making the pterosaur, and he's like, build the head and build these shoulders and build the long arms, and then he gets to the legs and tail, and he's like out of bits. Like he's like, oh, let's just make the little feet and like that, right? They have these really big heads, and they're designed to really focus on flying, especially the earlier types. And so this guy having really small wings is unfortunate, but I get that for its price point and how its size and packaging, I get why. So big thing with pterosaurs in general is that this guy, Tropicnathus, it's South American cousin, Ornithocheirus, these guys here are in a similar family grouping. And so is this one here, which is, I think, Schleit. It's a Schleit. It's a German company. I think it's Anzun. It's a very, I can't say the name properly. It's calm down. Hansunix. And so they have a crest like this too. Now, one thing I want to point out with the Ornithocheirus is that if you look at a skull, it looks just like this. It is very the same shape. So in some ways, it's like a different direction spoonbill. Why not think? And this is not something that there's a paper on. It's just want you to kind of get your mind in paleontology world. Like this is a basic frame. Think of a skeleton like the big bars and beams that build a house, the very core structure, and there's things coming off of it, right? So you have a house core structure, but then there's like sheetrock and blinds and roof shingle and all that. So why wouldn't there be some kind of growth bigger than this? We see how many bird skeletons are skulls. There's like the bird's beaks right here. There's like a little structure, and there's extra growth beyond the bony part. So it's one thing to point out that these guys, I mean, yes, they would have had. This is the core structure. So I get that they're being conservative and that you don't want to go off and make it really weird. But the idea of having extra bits here, something shinier, that's cool. That could be a possibility too. But what's really neat too is the color, and we don't have any idea of knowing as of right now pterosaur color that I'm aware of. But most likely pterosaurs were very colorful. They, we as humans spend a lot of our time assuming other animals are just constantly fighting. When you see nature shows, they'll show the tigers, lion, whatever, and they're hunting and fighting. But usually what you don't see is the several hours of the documentarian just filming nothing happening. And then, oh, it's a fight scene. Let's, zoom in like that, right? And so animals do engage with other species, but most of their focus is on their own species, particularly finding mates, having babies and all that, right? And so one of the things is that for humans, for example, we use, we have clout. We buy nice clothes and we go places and have property. Well, for these animals, yes, they will have territorial disputes, but also having physically bright colors to get attention. Maybe they were dull during most of the year and turned really bright when they had mating season, or maybe they were dull as juveniles, got to a certain age, and then they grew these bright colors, like like a green iguana turning orange or something like that. And so those are all factors to look at too. And those are things that, as of right now, in our science understanding, we can't tell, and most likely some of those things we'll just never know. But this bright crest here, I like that. That's the whole point of the story. Now, other pterosaurs, you perspective on here, pterodactyl. People say, why is pterodactyl so famous but not so famous? It was the first pterosaur really recognized by science, and therefore it was the namesake for the group. And so paleontologists were finding more pterosaurs, and they thought they were just different varieties of pterodactyl. And they're like, wait, pterodactylus is just one genus, and there's multiple other types, right? And so, look, for example, I'm going to show you a sciencey model and a Jurassic World model. So here we have the Jurassic World Dimorphodont. And so if you saw the movie, there's a big pteranodon, still huge crest. The little guys that are flying around, kind of like bats almost, those are the Dimorphodonts. And so here's one. This is a 2013 Safari. So for me, this is one of my most accurate models here. I love this guy here. And so these are earlier in the Jurassic period, right? So here we have the Jurassic World Rhamphorhynchus, which you're seeing there, which is a really cool model. And here we have the scientific one from 2010 Safari. And so you're seeing that there. Rhamphorhynchus was one of the first pterosaurs I learned about as a kid. And saying the name Rhamphorhynchus made me very proud when I was young. What's seen in the Walking with Dinosaurs, okay, so they show the Tropicnathus leaving South America under the name Ornithocheirus. Remember in the movie Walking with Dinosaurs, the animal was called Ornithocheirus, but it was most likely a Tropicnathus because it was in South America. And so bear in mind, these pterosaurs could probably fly, the continents are still close together, and they can probably fly a lot around the world, but So they showed when they were leaving South America, the animal, there were these things called Tapihara. And I believe they did a video on Tapihara already. But it turns out what you saw was not actually Tapihara. It was the Tupacnithus, which is this guy here. I did a video on this guy too. Fun fact, this is a Jurassic World figure. I did not realize I had a non-Jurassic World figure right here. Look at that. And so for more on these names and spelling, just go down. I have a link to my website, to my pterosaur page. You can see them all close. But I have the scientific models, not the Jurassic World models on the webpage, because science. And so so basically what you saw, it looks like this in documentary. The most famous, historically past pterodactyl, the next most famous pterosaur is Pteranodon, which I did a video about like a couple weeks ago, about a month ago. And so here's the Jurassic World Pteranodon, And here is the filming safari. Let's see. Nope. Ah, there it is. Safari 2019. This is actually the picture I use for my website because it's well, one of the pictures, but for the icon for pterosaurs, because I like the walking stance. And Pteranodon is like the poster child because, and here's the thing I wanted to point out, in the Walking Dinosaur special, it mentions that Ornithocheirus is like the biggest animal and flying animal ever. So just a lot to unpack. First of all, we have more Atropognathus, and they have like a 30-foot wingspan. So that's pretty big. Ornithocheirus, we don't have enough of it to know that. The parts we know estimate between 20 and 28 feet. And there's always scientific advisors on these documentaries, but then the creative team has the final say, the director and so on. So when you say you're making a movie and you're not a scientist, you're a storyteller, and you're told this animal could be 20 feet long or 28 feet long, which would you choose? And the idea they chose 28 feet. And even when the scientists said, hey, I think they're not, I personally think that's not a good number, and they're like, we're going with 28 feet. So my argument here, saying that they're a similar species, is that maybe they meant to say it was the largest animal at the time it lived, because it would have been, I think, either it's a little bit bigger than Pteranodon, which is more famous, but of course the largest animals of all time that fly are a group called Asdarchids, which includes this Papo Quetzalcoatlus on the ground, and the Jurassic World Quetzalcoatlus. And so this guy, of course, is, if not it, one like it in Europe, are the largest flying animals known to science, with an estimated 36 foot or a little bit more wingspan. Found in Big Bend, Texas. I did a video on this already, and I'm going to link after this the pterosaur video. I have a pterosaur playlist, actually, of all of them. And so that's my conciliatory view, is that when they say this is largely a flying animal, it may have been at the time it lived, but in the later part of the Cretaceous period, a bigger thing showed up, right? And so pterosaurs are very interesting, but again, I mentioned in the beginning that because they have such thin bones, because they're really just, if you ever see a skeleton of one, they are just bits and pieces, huge heads and crests sometimes, but it's just weird how they have just these kind of diminutive bodies. And I mentioned fossil bias with the Asdarchids. It is actually a little bit different because these guys are thought to be mainly terrestrial. I mean, in that they are not, where many pterosaurs are found like near waterways and all that. These guys are thought to be actually on land, like walking around a lot, right? And so that again gives a fossil bias that if it's an environment like the Hell Creek Formation where T-Rex is found, if you have a lot of terrestrial land animals being preserved, well, guess what? This terrestrial pterosaur will be preserved, right? Even though it has very thin, small bones, it's still being preserved because of the environment it's in. Whereas many of these guys live near waterways, and I can so imagine that you are a bird or something or a bat, and you fall into the water. That splash that'll attract fish and crocs and and back then mosasaurs and pterosaurs, other marine reptiles, and so there's a bias there too. But there are a lot of cool pterosaurs. It's just weird because they're all designed to fly, so they're all laying down, so you can't quite see them as well. But there's different shapes, and the main thing to point out in closing is that when you look at these guys, even the Jurassic World specimen, when you look at them, they all have these different crests, and so initially it was thought they could have been water animals or maybe other situations, maybe helping flying, but they all have crests, most likely not for locomotion or lifestyle, but for attracting mates. And so the idea is very simple. I remember I was at one of my tours, a kid looked at our Diplodocus and said, how can it tell itself from another, like a Apatosaurus or a Barosaurus? And I said, well, for them, those sauropod long necks, they look very different. These guys, like some of them are in the same time frame and some environment, they would have looked very different to each other. And I said to him, like, you and I are humans, and there's like chimpanzees in the world. Well, we can tell a chimp from a human, right? But for a sauropod, it may just look at us and say, oh, look at those two-legged, hairy, upright things. And so you have to remember it's from that species perspective that they're looking at things. So anyway, so that's Ornithocheirus in a nutshell. And like I said, I see that Camp Cretaceous has a new season. I already watched it. And they have a dinosaur in it that we only know from like 4 bones. And there's going to be a toy of that. So we're gonna deal with that in time. That being said, thank you for tuning in. I'll see you guys next week.